Here I am in Iceland, folks, in Reykjavík, the capital. And I'm going to do this all in one shot. The wind's obligingly backed off for a second. See the beautiful sea where I'm staying here, and that's actually the sea there. Believe it or not, it's almost 9 o'clock here in the evening. For an Australian, it's very strange. This twilight, and the sun stays up until about 11:30. So we're going to come down here to my Scandinavian Icelandic garden, and I just want to read you something. See how we go. See if the wind's not going to be too strong. It has backed off a little. So I want to read you from my friend Paul Anthony Wallis's great book, The Invasion of Eden. And I've collected and read all of Paul's books, and they've been extremely inspiring, and they're one of the reasons I'm here talking to you about the Viking Age and the mysteries of the Viking Age. But today I want to read from page 42. Paul writes, to find another vector pointing conspicuously towards ancient Armenia, we turn to Norse mythology. 13th century Icelandic historian Snorri Sturluson argued from the ancient Viking sagas that Odin and the people who migrated with him through Russia to conquer Germany, Norway, Denmark and Sweden originated in Turkland in Ausaland. So that's ancient Armenia. That's modern Turkey. And that's where Paul and Matt Lacroix went recently on their expedition, and they're heading back there again next year with a bigger team, with a trained archaeologist, well-known archaeologist, and a number of other great people, and they're going to look into it. So I'll just read further what he writes. That's the high country in which Sturluson located Asgard, or Ausgarth, as we say in Norse, the fortified mountain city of the Aesir. In his work, the Prose Edda, Sturluson writes, Odin was accompanied by a great army of old and young, men and women, carrying their treasures with them. Through whatever lands they travelled, the things spoken of them were so great that they were regarded more like gods than men. And that's what I'm writing about in my book, Viking Superpowers, Way of Asgard. And in the month I've been here in Scandinavia and Iceland, I've discovered the most awesome things and taken a lot of film, a lot of photos, talked to a lot of people, written a lot of things down. So I got some exciting stuff to share with you soon. And I'm looking a bit whiskery because I've been out in the wild mostly. I'm just back in civilised Reykjavík the last 2 days, so I need a bit of a beard trim, and I've had a nice couple of hot showers, which here in Reykjavík have a distinct, it's not exactly sulphurous, but it's a real volcanic scent, and anybody who's been here knows what I'm talking about. And it's exactly the same scent I experience out in the wild with all this bubbling mud, and a valley I went to yesterday. To carry on with what Paul wrote, he said, we might pause to ask what the things so great flowing from ancient Armenia must have been to have appeared godlike to people scattered in other places. Sturluson's translators use phrases like glorious things or glorious exploits, which give the idea of unfathomable courage and amazing achievements and abilities. In his prologue to the Prose Edda, Sturluson gets into more detail, specifying Odin and his wife's powers of precognition and other magical abilities. We're just near the local airport, and all the Iceland airplanes are coming in. I love watching aircraft land and take off. He then says, other phrases in his History of the Norse Kings suggest that Odin's kind were either superhuman or not entirely human, referencing the group as Odin and all the Aesir with him, and many other people. The Aesir of the Norse sagas were unmistakably superior to regular human beings, and yet the narratives show them to be emphatically flesh and blood and bone people of some kind. And then Paul kindly writes in brackets, for more on this topic, I would recommend Viking Superpowers by my friend and fellow researcher, David Lovegrove. Thank you once again, Paul. I'm delighted to be part of the ongoing research. And then Paul goes on to talk about other amazing things in the Prose Edda that point to ancient Armenia. And even though I've literally been studying the Viking Age for almost 50 years, well, it actually has been 50 years. I don't want to seem too old, but I sort of am. This took me by surprise when I first came across it in the Prose Edda, and I thought, like a lot of students, well, he must have just been throwing Troy in there to be cool, to connect it up with the ancient Greek myths, but I've come to see that that's not true. I believe Snorri. I actually believe Snorri. I think he was a really honest, very well educated, very driven historian. I don't believe that he was a Christian. He was a type of Christian, but he wasn't a Christian, especially he wasn't a priest. He wasn't a monk. He wasn't driven by a Christian agenda. He was actually the opposite. I really believe he was actually a practicing pagan, and what he did was save the ancient stories from the church by sort of not exactly being a sheep in wolf's clothing, no, a wolf in sheep's clothing. He was a powerful person, powerful connections, and he managed to get away with what he did. And I think if he'd been in Norway or a more mainstream Scandinavian country, the kings there would have basically destroyed his work and probably destroyed him. But because he was in far off Iceland and he did have personal connections to the royal families in Norway and in Sweden and probably in Denmark, he got away with it. Thank God this was preserved for us. So I would definitely recommend this book. The Invasion of Eden is a great read, and it brings us right up to the present. It brings us right up to the latest in UAP disclosure, UFO. Paul delves deeply into that whole issue and how he sees it connected to the ancient paleo contact. And in my last video with a compilation of whistleblowers talking about this phenomenon and how it has ancient roots, and how these beings, as Paul says in here and as I talk about, were humanoid, but they seem to have been superhuman. They seem to be able to live for maybe thousands of years. There's stories that point to some kind of technology. Ithun's apples, they're called in the Snorri's stories in the Edda, but like, it's probably not talking about apples. It's some kind of drug, some kind of gene therapy, some kind of reverse aging, and I will make videos about this later, about how when Ithun and her apples were taken away from the Aesir, they started to age rapidly, which to me is a telling thing. It's very graphic, and you can imagine the horror of being young and beautiful and 20 and then suddenly being 70 or 80. You'd be desperate. Quick, get the apples back, get Ithun back, get the therapy back, give us back our youth. And this is something denied to us. We just have to accept this quite limited 80 to 100 years. Some people get less, some more. But anyway, check out Paul's book. It's magnificent. Watch out for my book, Viking Superpowers, Way of Asgard. Watch out for my videos from Scandinavia and Iceland. I've had a brilliant time here, and this is accumulation of a couple of years of research, constant note-taking, building up my own knowledge, sort of memorising things, advancing in my Icelandic and Old Norse language skills. And now here I am in Scandinavia, in Iceland. I'll be home in about a week, but I've had an incredible time, and the superpowers have been with me. I feel like the Aesir are with me, and I keep being introduced to the most amazing people and taken to the most amazing places. And I thank you all those who know me here and who are following me. You know who you are. And I'll see you again soon. Bye.